Today's video is brought to you with help from the Rock Island Auction Company, and my thanks for their kind permission to reproduce images of Eva Braun's pistol. If you are in the market for interesting firearms, do visit their auction website, link in the description box below. It is not widely known, but Hitler's longtime girlfriend, Eva Braun, was, presumably for her own protection, as her boyfriend was the target of frequent assassination plots, sometimes armed. Braun had originally been working as an assistant to Heinrich Hoffmann, the Nazi photographer, when she was introduced to Hitler in Hoffmann's studio in Munich in 1929, when Hitler was 40 years old and Braun was 17. Hitler had a predilection for young women, preferably without too much in the brains department. A pretty, blonde, blue-eyed Eva was soon his girlfriend. Though in the early days she had to compete with Hitler's half-niece, Gaily Raubel, for the Führer's affections, until Raubel shot herself dead in Hitler's Munich apartment using Hitler's own pistol in 1931. Hitler was in Nuremberg at the time. With Raubel dead, Braun moved center stage, and when Hitler neglected her in 1932 due to election campaigning, Braun emulated Raubel and made a half-hearted suicide attempt, shooting herself in the chest with her father's pistol. Hitler then became more committed to the relationship. As a member of Hoffmann's staff, Braun traveled to many of the important Nazi events of the 1930s, acting as an official photographer. In May 1935, she attempted suicide again, taking an overdose of sleeping pills when Hitler again neglected her. And the upshot of this was Hitler providing Eva and her sister Gretel Braun with a 3-bedroom apartment in Munich. The following year, Hitler purchased a villa for the pair in the Bogenhausen suburb of Munich, which became Eva Braun's official residence, though she was subsequently to spend most of her time living at Hitler's home, the Berghof for the Obersalzberg above Berchtesgaden, even when he was not there, and also had her own apartment at the Reich Chancellery in Berlin, which she visited infrequently. Braun was deliberately kept out of the public eye, as Hitler presented himself to his adoring public as an asexual bachelor who only thought of his work. He had a considerable following among German Hausfraus and young women, and worked hard to keep his relationship with Braun secret. Handing a pistol to a woman who had already shot herself with one appears on the face of it to be an odd thing to do, but Hitler himself was routinely armed, carrying a small concealed pistol in a special pocket inside the waistband of his trousers as a last resort if his innumerable bodyguards failed to protect him. In 1939, as things were hotting up in Europe following Hitler's annexations of Czechoslovakia and Austria, and also the Georg-Elsa bomb plot that nearly killed Hitler in Munich, he presented Braun with this small-caliber pistol. Ortgies was a short-lived post-World War I German gun company set up in 1919, whose pistols were later manufactured by Deutsche Werke until 1924. Ortgies produced 3 variants of essentially the same handgun, a hammerless semi-automatic pistol. The weapon came in the large frame, 7 or 8 round 7.65mm or 9mm Kurz versions, both of which proved popular worldwide, particularly in the United States, where many thousands were imported. And also a small frame 6-round 6.35mm or 25 ACP version, which was the model Hitler gave to Braun. An ideal little backup gun, it was small and lightweight enough to be carried in a lady's handbag, and was presented to Braun in a special rosewood box. Braun's gun was nothing fancy, just a bog-standard 6.35mm Ortgies, its only distinctive feature being the addition of a small gold plaque on the right side of the slide inscribed with her name in capital letters. The question was, did Braun know how to use it? Surrounded as she was by SS bodyguards and the young adjutants from Hitler's staff, she had, according to testimony, fired a pistol, but acknowledged that she wasn't any good at it and didn't enjoy such activities. In fact, one witness felt that she would be more likely to accidentally shoot herself with it due to her clumsiness and hesitancy with weapons. To this end, she may have carried this pistol in her handbag on occasions during the war, but at some point it was placed in its box inside a drawer in her Munich house and left there. She did not take it with her when she flew to Berlin at war's end to be with Hitler in his bunker. How this pistol ended up in the United States post-war is interesting. Munich fell to US forces on the 30th of April 1945, and Hitler's apartment was captured and later thoroughly looted by souvenir-hunting US troops. The same occurred to Eva Braun's house. However, at some point, around the time US forces arrived in the city, the local police chief, who remained in post in the early months of the occupation, his police being used to help maintain order in the badly bombed city and the largely intact suburbs, had confiscated firearms from Nazis, officials, and civilians, the Americans very keen that no firearms should remain in German hands, fearful as they were of post-war so-called Werwolf attacks. These weapons were stored in the Munich police gun depot, and the police chief was savvy enough to know how to butter up his new masters. One room at the depot was used to store weapons that had been owned by prominent Nazis and other celebrities in Munich. First Lieutenant Harold Showalter had been assigned to Munich to oversee the cleanup and scrapping of German aircraft, tanks, and vehicles scattered about the city and its environs, and he lived in a house in Grunewald, just south of the city, for about 18 months. Showalter befriended a local game warden, and they would often go deer hunting together at night, sometimes joined by the German chief of police, who turned a blind eye to such activities. The shot deer were then donated to local civilians who were facing severe food shortages. Before long, Showalter had been shown the German weapons stored at the police depot, and the police chief allowed the young GI to select several Lugers for himself. Eventually, the chief gave him access to the special collection of celebrity firearms, and he presented Showalter with Eva Braun's Ortgies pistol. In 1948, now a captain, Showalter left the army and returned stateside. He raised a family, and later he gave each of his children one of the German weapons he had brought back from Munich. His daughter Elizabeth received Eva Braun's gun and was told never to sell it. But then in 1997, desperately needing cash, Elizabeth sold the gun secretly to collector Michael Sevener, Showalter being apparently very angry when he discovered what had happened. Captain Showalter himself passed away in 2005 at the age of 89, but not before giving a full legal affidavit concerning how he had obtained the firearm in the first place. Examining the weapon internally, it revealed that the pistol had not been fired, and this backed up witness statements that Braun was considered clumsy and dangerous with firearms, and that she had not in fact used it, though she had been seen carrying a pistol in her handbag. The type of pistol and the gold markings were authenticated by Eva Braun's cousin in 2004, backing up Captain Showalter's affidavits concerning the pistol's provenance. In 2012, Sevener put the pistol up for auction with Rock Island Auctions, and on the 30th of November that year it achieved a sale price of $34,500. In 2014 it was auctioned again, realizing $54,625. Probably a record for a commoner garden Ortgies. However, this one-of-a-kind World War II relic and its interesting background history and former owner make it a very desirable collector's piece today. Many thanks for watching. Please subscribe and share, and also visit my audiobook channel, War Stories with Mark Felton. You can also help to support both of my channels at PayPal and Patreon. Details in the description box below.